This episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast is brought to you by Nomadicare. Now, personally, I love Nomadicare. I've used Nomadicare, and I recommend the company to all new travelers. What Nomadicare does is it takes the fear out of getting set up with a bad recruiter, which is the biggest fear that you have jumping into this journey. So they sit down, they interview recruiters, they vet them, get them on a list, and then provide them to you as a free service, as a free recruiter matchmaking service in order to get you started on your journey. Now, usually you only get 2 recruiters going through Nomadicare, but being a listener of the show, you can get 3. So this is how it's going to work. You go to nomadicare.com/Dylan. You will get set up with 3 recruiters to be on your dream team, as well as a guide to get you started on your journey.
Dr. Ali Jaffery, can you please tell listeners where you're at in the world right now?
San Luis Obispo, California.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dylan Callier, and today I got a very special guest with me, Dr. Ali Jaffery. And I have a feeling this is going to be an eclectic hodgepodge of information and discussion, so I'm quite excited.
Yeah, baby.
Ali, can you please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your travel journey?
I was actually born in another country. I was born in Pakistan, and my family moved here when I was just a little baby. I was 2 months old, and my green card had a picture of my baby picture with my mom holding me in her hands when I came over. And so I grew up between New York and Connecticut, mostly in Connecticut, and grew up in a lower to middle class kind of upbringing, but in an impoverished environment. So I lived in one of the poorest cities in the country at the time, which was in Connecticut, which is surprising. Most people think Connecticut to be a place where there's a lot of wealthy people and generational money, where it has some of the poorest places in the world too. Like the economy between the haves and have-nots are really stark there. You can go a few blocks to see that. But really great parents, really great upbringing. Went to the University of Connecticut on a full scholarship. And being the oldest of 5 kids, there was always a lot of pressure on me to come back and help the family as much as I can, because I had a full scholarship. That wasn't a guarantee that everyone else would too. So flash forward maybe a couple of years after graduation from PT school, started working right away. My mom was laid off, and then my dad, he had a restaurant, lost his business. So there was a 3-5-year period of time where both of them were unemployed. And during that time, all the money I had saved to try to go and travel by myself, I wanted to really go on an adventure. I've always wanted to be on an adventure. And growing up, we never went on any family vacations. We were just too poor to go on family vacations. We'd do like a one-day thing at the zoo in the summertime or in an amusement park. But during that time, the money I had saved, those 2 or 3 years after college, I ended up just using it all to pay the mortgage and help my younger siblings that were going to school at the time. So then, even though I didn't really have school loans to pay off, I kind of ended up having to pay back something, because it was a lot of money during that period of time that I paid off. And so instead of traveling in my 20s, I ended up traveling in my 30s, because at that point I was already deep into a career and never had the opportunity to travel in my 20s. And so now I'm traveling. Now I'm good. Now I'm everywhere.
That's awesome.
I've been to all 7 continents.
Yeah, all 7. Yeah, and that's something we're going to get into as well, because I'm quite excited to talk about a few specific one of those continents.
Yeah. Way down south.
Way down south. Yeah. So usually, at least in the travel industry, the majority of travelers are younger, especially in the physical therapy world like we're in. Most of the travelers are new grads.
Yeah.
And then when you get into nurses, it's still kind of those younger ones who are 2-3 years out of school and they decide to go in. So you were kind of a little bit of a black sheep there, where
breaking the mold.
Yeah, breaking the mold. And before we started recording, we were kind of talking a little bit, and you had a quote or a mantra that you've been living by. Can you tell the listeners what that was?
Yeah. So most recently, I went on a 9-month trip around Asia and Africa. And as the trip went on, I kept saying to people when they would get into conversations, I was like, make each day special in some special way. And that could be in a multitude of ways, in a plethora of ways. You're in control of your own happiness. And I think a lot of people have put their happiness into the control of other people and allow other situations and individuals to have such a strong impact on what is happiness for you. So what is happiness for you? Find out what those things are, and it doesn't have to be something big. Every day it could be something small. Like today, I'm doing a podcast with a super great guy, Dylan. I wasn't expecting to do that on a Monday, and here I am doing a great podcast. So really take control of your life and find a way to make it special each and every day. Life is short.
Absolutely. And that reminds me of a conversation, and maybe it was a podcast or something I was reading, and it was, as we get older, as a kid, your days are long. It seems like, a 10-minute timeout takes forever. And just the time is so much longer than as we age, it seems to be getting shorter and shorter. And that's not necessarily, obviously the time doesn't change, but what does change is your routines. And when you go into certain routines, it's a different part of the brain that's activated, and it's just going through the motions. And so if you're just going through the motions every day, time flies so fast. But if you were to do something special, or to do something that was out of the blue, out of the ordinary, all of a sudden time slows down, because now you're using that part of the brain that has to focus and has to be conscious. More
part of the brain you can use, the better.
Yeah. And I equate it to like starting a contract. Those first few days are so long with like orientation and the first few patients and learning everything. But then as you kind of go into it, the contract just goes quicker and quicker.
The rest of the contract goes by like literally like that. 13 weeks is like nothing. My first contract was 13 weeks. I was like, I'm going to Seattle. I'm moving cross country for the first time. I'll be able to do everything there for 3 months for the summer, and I can go to the next place. And I ended up staying in Seattle for almost 10 months. I just couldn't. Every weekend went by so quickly.
Wow.
There's so much.
That's cool. So you visited all 7 continents, and that's recently become one of my goals as well. What was that first big trip like? Because I know you had a very big step going from kind of being somebody that your family depended on into being this adventurous person, this worldwide traveler. Can you talk about that experience?
Yeah, I'll talk about like why I did it. Like, once I got deeper into my career and I ended up getting my OCS and manual I get all these additional certifications. I just became so embedded in the outpatient sports medicine world, teaching classes, presenting at conferences. But none of that was really fulfilling that itch I had inside me. I really still wanted to go and see the world. I still wanted to expand my horizons. I still wanted to experience something that was out of the norm. I worked the same job for 12 years. Still the best job I've ever had. But it puts you in the same circle of same routines, same people, great reputation amongst the same circle. So I was just spinning the same wheel over and over again, even though I was adding to that. So I kept saying, why not in my 30s? Why can't I just leave that job?
Yeah.
Go and travel the world for a period of time. And my first trip was 6 months, and I went around South America and Antarctica. And I told my job like a month before. I was like, okay, I'm taking 6 months off to travel around South America. What can we do? So I thought I had to quit my job. They ended up letting me keep my job. They paid me all my vacation time, gave me unpaid leave, and then 6 months later, like, when you come back, we'll find you a place to work. So that was great. But then during that trip, as it went along, I still wanted more of a change. So I ended up doing physical therapy after I got back.
Got it. Very cool. I didn't realize that. So I knew you did South America. I didn't realize Antarctica was also in that.
I was in that trip, yeah.
Wow. That is a jump.
Yeah. Started in Colombia and just kept working my way down, baby. Working my way down. I wanted to see it all.
So how was, I imagine a culture shock going to a whole nother country that you haven't done before, and then you kept going south, and then now you're into basically no man's land. Do you have a favorite story from South America, and then talking a little bit about Antarctica as well?
Yeah. I ended up going to spend 6 weeks in Brazil at some point in time during my trip, and I somehow found myself with one of those huge, crazy carnival costumes, and was in the Samba Dome, which is like the biggest thing during Rio Carnival, biggest carnival in the world, with the crazy feathers. You should see my outfit. It was so ridiculous. Big headpiece, crazy outfit. And I was in the Samba Dome, like just dancing through. And there's millions of spectators, probably 1 billion spectators all over the world, but 1 million people in the streets, and the stands are just endless.
Wow.
People. And I was just dancing and dancing. And then, you're starting to get tired, but then you just, you guys got to get a second wind, just keep on dancing. So that was like unexpected. I love that kind of stuff, but I didn't think I could actually do it in Rio just because it's it's expensive and so difficult to get into it. But as I got myself there, I just had to make it a reality. You know, put it out there in the world. You want to do something, put it out there in the world, and you may be surprised. You'll find a way.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And then, so how was Antarctica? How long were you there?
I was there for a 12-day trip. So I know a lot of people have gone there in other capacities, either through like a military or staying on a science research base if they're doing research there. So they did stay for a lot longer. But, you know, as a tourist, you know, I didn't actually know you could go to Antarctica. You know, as a kid, I've always wanted to go on these adventures, and, you know, I can't go to the moon. So I was like, maybe I can go to Antarctica one day. That's something out of the blue. I didn't even think people actually went there unless you were doing research, right?
Right.
But come to find out that they do. There's limited tourism to Antarctica, but there is tourism there. And the way it works is you go to Ushuaia, which is the tip of Argentina. Okay. From there, you take a boat, a cruise ship. It's like a converted research vessel that has 100 passengers. Okay. And it takes 2.5 days to cross Drake's Passage, which is the body of water that combines the Pacific Ocean and Atlantic Ocean. It's really, really rough waters. I mean, the boat is like doing this for those 2.5 days. So hopefully you're not too seasick, because that's what the boat does. And so when you get there, I spent 6 days actually around Antarctica. So for people who do want to go to Antarctica, try to opt for a longer trip, because there are trips that are, the most typical trip is 10 days. That only gives you actually 4 days on Antarctica, and you never get to the continent. You just get to some of the islands on the peninsula.
Got it.
Because it takes, 2.5 days. So that's 3 days there, 3 days back. So that's 6 days of the trip is out at sea. Plenty to see out at sea. And we saw orcas and all kinds of birds and whales and whatnot. But you want to get to the continent, right? So the trip I went on was a 12-day trip. It was called the Base Camp Expedition trip. So the reason I did that trip because it was longer and also had a lot of cool activities built into it. So we did 2 mountaineering trips. We did kayaking. We did snowshoeing. We did quite a few. We actually camped on Antarctica one night as well, and all kinds of things. We just saw so many animals and mountains. Like, it's not this big block of ice. Like everyone thinks it's just like a block of ice that you drop down on a continent. It is so beautiful. It's pristine. It's untouched. Mm-hmm. Beautiful mountains. Beautiful icebergs. The icebergs make these crazy geometric shapes. With an iceberg, only 10 or 20% of it is visible from above the water. The rest of it's underwater. So as that melts and changes, its dynamics, it flips. So it makes all these cool, idling kind of shapes. Yeah. And you get a reflection of that in the water as well. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool.
That's really cool. Cool. So obviously these experiences have impacted you. And one of the things we were talking about is kind of personality changes and how you change as you travel. You reflected me, where we were both very introverted when we were young. When you kind of started becoming more extroverted, was it gradually, or was it just a exponential curve, or was there a drop off, or how did that work?
Maybe a little bit of both. Like if you were to see me in high school and before, I was probably the shyest person you've ever met. Like, I sat in the lunch by myself here in high school. I mean, it's like embarrassing. Like, I don't know what was wrong with me. I was just so closed off to the world. I had all these walls and barriers in front of me, and you could just stay that way, and I didn't want to stay that way. Mm-hmm. And so I started taking steps to like change that. So like, I remember senior year, I started just forcing myself to be more involved. So there was a class that I could take as a senior where you teach remedial English to students, freshmen and sophomores, primarily, that most of them are, from another country that are learning English for the first time, like their parents migrated here when they were in their teens. So it was like a, remedial English class. I would teach that along with the teacher. So that put me in front of a classroom for one of my classes every day. They also started a debate team in my high school. So I became the president of the debate team. So this is, again, person who's like the shyest kid in the school, a big high school. I was probably the shyest person in school. I just forced myself to get into these roles. And I just became hyperactive, and anything I could get my hands on to try to force myself to break through some of those barriers, I did. And, that's something that a lot of people should do about anything. Whatever you're, self-conscious about or have find to be a challenge, to overcome that challenge, you have to put yourself in those challenging positions to overcome it. You can't overcome it sitting by yourself in the corner of the lunchroom, hoping no one sees you as you're eating your food, you know?
That's funny. Mine was also gradual as well. And I definitely think once I started traveling, even though I was a professional, my personality has definitely changed just since I've been traveling. But when I was in like middle school, I was always the last kid picked for like kickball. During recess, I would I wasn't any good at kickball, so I stopped even trying. I just started going off and like trying to draw things over in the corner. I did I did sit with people at lunch. Got into high school, got a little bit confidence boost, started doing, found something I was naturally good at. So percussion, kind of went down the music path for a while. But even then I was still, it's a lot of solitude and a lot of alone time to practice music. So I would excuse myself early from classes and just go and work and obsess over this piece that I was working on. It really wasn't until I started college that I started getting out of my comfort zone and started actively trying to talk to people. And that is when I started making those small steps towards it. And they really just build on each other. And there are certain things that happen that will like really increase it very quickly. And then it might kind of go down to a slower increase, and then it increases really quickly again. Clinical internships was one of those.
Having your own podcast now. I mean, look at you. Here you go. YouTube, you're taking over the world.
And and then traveling was definitely one of those as well. So very, a lot of opportunity for growth.
If you were to see me in college, people would not think that I was shy, and I was progressively getting less shy, but people didn't realize that I still consider myself shy. Even to this day, I still have like these little subtle things that I'm working on that no one knows. Fun-loving, gregarious person that can relate to people anywhere, but they don't know that I still, still things that I'm working on along the way. So if you were to see me in college, you would think, oh, that guy's not shy. He's, got a lot of friends now, and I hung out with a very extroverted group, so their extroversion kind of rubbed off on me, and starting to travel. You travel by yourself is a challenge for a lot of people. Like people think, even me, I was like scared. I was so scared. I was like, can I do this? It was so easy. I mean, I'm surprised how easy it is. You are never alone. You might want to be alone. Alone. There's always somebody to talk to, or someone that'll talk to you. When you're alone.
That's funny. Ali, what was the most recent trip that you went on?
So the most recent trip started in September. I went to all over Asia and all over. Oh, I'll take that. Started over again. I should have said all over.
That's all right.
Okay, so my most recent trip, I was predominantly in Asia and spent some time in Africa as well. And it started off as another 6-month trip, like my South America and Antarctica trip. That was a 6-month trip. So in this trip, I went into it thinking, probably about the same, 6 months. But I didn't want to give myself like a set deadline. Like the last trip, after 6 months, I was like, okay, it's time to come home. Came home for 2 days, and I was like, okay, it's great. Saw family, saw friends. I should have just kept on traveling because I came back home below budget. I could have just kept going. So I should have kept going. So on this trip, 6 months turned into 9 months because I was, again, below budget, and I just kept wanting to see more. I only came back because it's nice in California in the summertime. So I was like, all right, well, if I got to come back to work, I'll come back in the summertime. Come back to California. I went to 11 countries altogether.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I think people get surprised. It's a lot cheaper than you think. People have said that I've spent, what do you spend? $40,000, $50,000. Like, how much do you spend on going on this trip? Because, people spend $5,000 on a 1 or 2 week trip overseas easily. And not even anywhere near that. Once you get there, you can get all these cheap flights, cheap deals. And if you're traveling open-ended, you can go wherever, whenever you want, whatever your heart desires. Like, don't have a plan. If anyone's interested in going and traveling abroad and taking the leap, even if it's just traveling, to do travel contracts, that's a good leap in and of itself. Because, you're taking yourself out of your comfort zone, going to new places, meeting new people, new experiences. But if you want to travel internationally, take the leap. Do not overplan it. Step 1, do not overplan. Do not obsess over every single step. I always overplan the first couple of weeks of these trips, and none of it happens because I just go with the flow. I started in Bali in Indonesia. Those first 3 weeks of my trip were predominantly in Indonesia. I went through stuff so fast. I thought it would take me 4 or 5 weeks to do the stuff that I did. I did it in really less than 3 weeks. Just kept going. I had so much energy and just kept going. So don't overplan it. Don't book anything. Just go. Just go and see the world. You can find so much cheap deals everywhere you go once you're there. Don't book it from here. Don't book a tour from here. Don't book anything. Just a one-way ticket. I only book one-way tickets. And most of my flights, I took probably 20-something flights. Most of my flights were $70, $100, $40, really cheap flights to go to all these different countries.
Got it. That was one of the books that changed my entire perspective of travel, because I always thought you had to make a lot of money. So Vagabonding by Rolf really opened my eyes to how cheap travel could be. And the example he gave was some movie with Charlie Sheen in it, where at the end of the movie, he's like, he buys this motorcycle in China and he drives it across China.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be this like big, like, oh, he's made it. Big financial guy, he's finally wealthy enough in order to accomplish this goal. And it doesn't have to be very expensive at all. And he kind of breaks it down how you're able to do it cheaply and also safely into all these other different countries. But definitely highly recommend that book. To those.
Another thing to add to that, I'll add in and say, I haven't read the book, but I'm all on board on the vagabonding idea. So I saw this podcast before I went on my first trip. Not podcast, I'm sorry. I saw this TED Talk, and it's by a gentleman named Stefan Sagmeister. So look it up on YouTube. Everyone should watch it. And what he does is he has this really, really well-to-do design and marketing firm in New York. And I believe he's a German guy. And he does this thing where every 7 years he shuts down his lucrative, popular business and takes 1 year off. So he's taking a few years of his retirement and splicing it into his life. And what he learned was, like, during those years off, it wasn't just travel. There's so much value that you gain in learning about yourself, learning new skills, learning new anything that can potentially, make you a more well-rounded person, fed right back into his business. So he shows all these examples of designs that he's come up with, and they kind of start all looking the same kind of marketing strategies. Goes away for this year, and the year that he did it in Bali, spent a year there and took woodworking and all kinds of arts and crafts kind of stuff. And he came back and his business did so much better because now he had this fresh perspective and new techniques and new skills and new ideas that if he just kept doing the same thing, it would have just been the same boring trend. So there's a lot of value to be gained by taking time away from what we consider traditional work, especially in the U.S. I mean, we work so much. You go to European countries, they get a month off like no one's business. They take a year off after school everywhere. That's just common. They go travel. And there's a lot to be gained by that. So check out his TED Talk. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Ali, when we were talking earlier about your travels, something that we had kind of discussed was how your network grows. And you went on a pretty inspirational point about kind of, you go on this travel PT thing, or if you're a travel nurse or travel sonographer, like you start meeting other people within the travel industry. And then once you start traveling outside the country, your network starts going global. So could you bring that up a little bit and talk on that point a little bit as well?
Yeah, sure. And I have friends now in so many countries and with all kinds of backgrounds, eclectic interests, and eclectic ventures. You'll meet a lot of people who are in the entrepreneurial side of things, on the creative side of things. And there's so much to be gained by talking to and interacting and being friends with these people. And, I don't travel. When I do travel myself, it's not like I'm traveling the whole time alone. It's like you kind of make friends as you go and you click with people, and then you end up staying with them for, a few days, a few hours, a few weeks. I've traveled probably the longest with one person, almost 5 weeks through Patagonia with the same guy. We met in Antarctica, and we both were kind of going the same direction, and we both like to see the mountains. So we just went and did it. And, talking to some of these people, you get to learn a lot more about what the possibilities out there. It makes you think about the world. And, probably another guy that I met that was really interesting and inspirational for me was a person by the name of Martin Murrell. And he is one of these enigmatic personalities, big, full of life. And when you see both of us together, we just feed off of each other's energy. You feel like, forget the moon, like you could go to Pluto if you were around the two of us, you would think you could accomplish literally anything. Like we just get so hyped up and amped up about things. And we spent long nights talking about life and our pursuits and how to make that happen. And when you have that kind of international net of people that it can get you out of the simple-minded thinking that you may have where you are at that point in time in life. You get to meet a lot more people. They have a lot more perspective on things. And so this individual is writing a book, and I've written a rough draft for the forward for his book. And that's that's never something I thought I would do. But you meet this person, you hit it off with this person, and we have the same views, and he wants me to write one of the forwards for his book. So I don't know if it will be in the book, but I'm hoping it will be. But I've already written a rough draft, sent it to him. I mean, it's something I never thought would ever happen.
That's cool. Yeah, just opportunities popping up all over the place. And I think it's tough making decisions sometimes, and just realizing that if you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And
yeah, that's right.
But as long as you keep aware of what you're saying yes to, and then those choices will eventually kind of build on each other and just lead to something
yes awesome. To life. Say yes to life.
All right. And some extra credit questions here.
All right.
Are some books that you recommend, or podcasts, or personalities that you follow? Could be travel related, could be anything.
Okay. All right. So for books, I don't really read like travel related books per se. I just like to read while I'm traveling. You have a lot more time to read because you're on train, buses, and at the beach. You just have more time to read. So I don't know if this is a little bit older, but I read The Kite Runner and 1,000 Splendid Suns in the past few years during some of these trips. And I mean, if any of your listeners have not read those two books, his third book is pretty good too, but those two books in particular, if you have not read those books, fantastic. I was on a plane finishing up reading one of the chapters in 1,000 Splendid Suns, and it's just gripping, sad moments happening, and I'm like, I had to put the book down. I was like, I can't be crying around all these strangers. Like, I feel like I got denied a good cry, And how often do you have a good cry, especially as a guy? How often do you have a good cry? Like, I'm in the middle seat, and I'm like fighting back tears, So I recommend those two books. On this trip, I read Beneath a Scarlet Sky, which is on Amazon. It's a popular Kindle book. Yeah. It's fantastic. All those books take place in other countries. This one takes place in Italy. It follows a 18-year-old who becomes a spy during German occupation during World War II of Italy. And Italy was an ally of Germany, so he became like an Italian spy. And it's based on a true story with some exaggeration built into. So those are a couple of really, really good books. For podcasts, I like all kinds of stuff. So Hidden Brain's a good one that some of my travel friends, my therapy travel friends have put me on. Hidden Brain's a great one that gets you thinking about all kinds of things of how the brain works. The Future of Everything is one that the Wall Street Journal puts on. That's great because the world's changing so fast, and it talks about technology and how it's changing for good and for potentially not so good. But it usually gives you a positive outlook on things. So those are a couple of the podcasts I like. What was the third question? Was the personalities?
Personalities, yep.
Yeah, so Martin Morell. If you don't know him, you will know him one day. He's a successful guy. You can find him. He goes by Tino, so you can find him on Tino TV, either on YouTube or Instagram. Follow him. He's a really inspirational guy. He'll make you feel like you could accomplish anything. And this guy's 27 or 28 years old, and he didn't go to college. He just wanted to learn by living life, and he learns all these amazing skills. He's great at so many different things because he went and traveled. He's been to 50-something countries, and he makes it happen. He doesn't make any excuses, and he's got this great book coming out and a lot of other great things too. So follow him.
That's great. That's awesome. Is there anything that you bought under $100 that has really helped you on your travels and on your journeys?
Yeah, that was a tough one. You sent me that question in advance. I wrote down a couple of things. That's a tough one because things aren't so cheap. I would say this one thing: if you are going to travel, please pack light. Do not pack too much stuff. You have to carry it with you for weeks and months on end. You'll need a lot less things than you think. All right. Ladies, I'm looking at you. Don't need like 10 pairs of shoes if you're going to be traveling for a few months. Go with a couple. You'll make it. You can always get what you need to get out there. But for under $100, I wrote down 4 things. So one, comfortable shoes. Like you're going to be doing a lot of walking, you're doing a lot of exploring. Depending what you're into doing, make sure you get the proper shoes for that. That'll probably run you $100, maybe less, right? I got into using merino wool, which is pricey. If you want to get like a shirt or a sweater that's merino wool, it's going to cost you $75, $80, but it's amazing. So this natural fiber, it's naturally odor resistant, bacterial resistant. I mean, literally, I've worn it, been out dancing all night, sweated through a polo shirt that was merino wool. I'm like, this is not going to be good in the morning. Put that thing out to dry, and it did not smell at all. I was shocked. So that'll help you to carry less clothes if you do have some merino wool things. A cheap one is get a money belt. It looks like a really thin fanny pack. It's kind of funny to see, but it's really common for travelers to use that. It's really a thin little money belt that hides underneath your pants, underneath your clothes. So that's where I put my passport, money, and credit cards and that kind of thing. I put it in this small little thing, so I don't carry a lot at any given time, but it's like thin. No one knows you have it. So if anything was to happen, they wouldn't get your stuff. They would just get whatever's in your pocket. Got it. And yeah, that covers the main cheap thing to get.
Yeah, I've heard of the money belt. I've not purchased one, but yeah,
it looks like a fanny pack. I don't know if you're gonna like it.
But being able to tuck it away in the pants and the drawers to where nobody's gonna see it or be able to kind of really run off with it. Definitely.
I do want to make it clear that it is, I think one of the, outside of like the loneliness part, people feel like they can't travel by themselves because it's going to be a lonely experience, and what are they going to do? That we've touched upon a lot, and a lot of your listeners, if they are already travelers, they're already used to that. They know that, and people who are interested in traveling, whether it's for work as a contractor or traveling abroad, you're not going to be alone. Trust me, you'll make friends. You'll be forced to make friends, and people just will talk to you anyway. The other thing is being afraid, fearful of traveling the world. In this country, it's amazing. They make you afraid of everybody else in the world. The world is safe. I went to so many countries where the U.S. website says, don't go there. There's level 2 activity, level 3, do not travel unless you're essential staff. You go and it is safe. The world is a safe place to travel. So don't be fearful. Even though we talk about taking certain precautions that things don't happen, like being pickpocketed or mugged, that could happen in New York City. That could probably happen here where I'm living now. Outside of that, don't believe the media. The world is safe. Everyone is super nice. You're going to meet super nice people everywhere you go. The cultures are great. The people are great. Nothing will happen unless something out of the blue. That could happen anywhere. So please, don't be afraid. But take that money belt just in case.
But take the money belt. Well, that kind of leads into my last question here. If somebody was on the fence, whether it's traveling the world or just starting their career as a medical traveler, what would you tell them?
I would say stop thinking so much about it and really go for it. If something you want to do, you can always go back home. Always go back home. I've talked to friends who, want to do these things, and they're like, oh, you're so lucky you can do these things. I came from, an immigrant family that came here with literally just a shirt on their backs and just worked really hard. If I can do it, anyone can do it. You just go, just make it happen. It's going to be tough because there's a lot of logistics you have to work out. I had to give away all my furniture and rent out my condo. I had to do all these steps to make it happen. And you'll be amazed. All that effort will pay off. You will learn so much more about yourself. You'll learn things that you're good at or great at that you didn't even know because you never tried. How do you know? I'm really good at hiking, apparently. I have these long legs. I can't squat like 100 pounds. But man, hiking, I can carry a heavy backpack. I can just climb up mountains at an amazing speed. I can do all these amazing things. I never knew. I started traveling. You don't know. I'm writing a foreword to a book. I'm not a literary person, but I'm doing that, and it sounds really good. You don't know until you go. So if you are fearful of going and have trepidations, you can always go back home. The world is safe. You can make it happen. It's not anywhere near as expensive as you think. So what are you waiting for? Make you stay special in some special way.
Oh, that's good. I think we'll end on that. That got me amped. That's good.
Telling you, man, everyone do it.
Well, listeners, if you are looking for the next episode of the podcast, you can find it at New Medical Nomads Facebook page, or if you have any questions for Ali, he's going to be in the New Medical Nomads group, and you can reach out to him there, or for any of the other guests that are on the show. If you are watching on YouTube, if you are watching on iTunes, any type of comments, ratings, likes, engagement will ultimately help us reach more people and get this message out and help more people, which is the ultimate goal of this podcast. So thank you so much for that. And Dr. Ali, thank you so much for being on. This was awesome.
Pleasure is all mine. I love your work. I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And all travelers, you guys have safe travels.